They pull back after deep connection. Here's why. A deep connection doesn't scare emotionally mature people. It only scares those who have spent their entire life avoiding themselves. When someone pulls back right after opening up, it's not random, it's not accidental, and it's definitely not about you not being good enough. It's because the moment the emotional intensity rises, something inside them wakes up, something they've been running from for years. People who pull back after connection aren't confused. They're overwhelmed. And overwhelmed people don't think, they react. They go silent. They detach. They disappear into a version of themselves that feels safer because that version doesn't require vulnerability, effort, or confrontation with their own patterns. Here's the part most people don't want to hear. They pull back not because the connection was weak, but because it was too real. Real connections expose emotional gaps. They expose trauma. They expose insecurities. They expose the truth that the persona they present, the independent, I don't need anyone facade, collapses the moment they feel seen. When someone like this meets a connection that finally touches them, their nervous system goes into threat mode. Not because you're a threat, but because emotional closeness feels like danger too. Someone who equates intimacy with abandonment, loss, or lack of control. The deeper the bond, the louder their fear becomes. You need to understand this clearly. Pulling back is their coping mechanism, not your failure. You didn't misread the energy. You didn't imagine the closeness. You didn't invent the moments when they were emotionally present, expressive, open, and vulnerable. Those moments were real, and that's exactly the problem for them. A deep emotional connection forces avoidant-leaning people into an internal crisis. On one hand, they want it. On the other, they don't know how to hold it. Their entire life, they've learned to survive by detaching when things get too intense. So when someone finally makes them feel something powerful, they default back to emotional self-protection. They might act cold. They might act indifferent. They might pretend they never cared. But understand this, detachment is a mask, not their truth. Their truth is the moment they start feeling emotionally exposed. Something inside them panics. They want closeness but fear dependency. They want intimacy but fear losing themselves. They want connection but fear the responsibility. That comes with being emotionally available. And here's the brutal reality you need to accept. The stronger the connection feels to you, the stronger the threat feels to them. You're interpreting the moment as a breakthrough. They're experiencing it as a breakdown. You're thinking, this is finally going somewhere. They're thinking, this is getting too real, I need distance. This is why their behavior flips so suddenly. 1 minute they're present, engaged, and emotionally alive. The next minute they retreat like nothing happened. Because to them, emotional closeness equals vulnerability. Vulnerability equals danger. Danger equals withdrawal. They don't pull back gradually, they shut down instantly. Because the moment they feel themselves slipping into genuine connection, their internal alarm goes off. Get out before you lose control. This isn't about you being too much. It's about them never learning how to emotionally stay. You can't fix that for them. You can't chase them into emotional readiness. You can't teach them how to hold a connection if their instinct is to avoid it. And here's the part most people never admit. They didn't pull back because they stopped feeling something. They pulled back because they felt everything all at once. That's the paradox. You think you lost them. But the truth is, the connection impacted them more than they're willing to admit. They pull back after deep connection. Here's why. When someone pulls back after forming a deep connection, the worst mistake you can make is taking it personally. Their withdrawal isn't a measurement of your worth, it's a measurement of their capacity. And capacity doesn't magically grow just because the connection felt meaningful. People don't suddenly become emotionally competent just because the moment demands it. They revert to whatever version of themselves feels the safest. Avoidant-leaning individuals live in a constant internal contradiction. They want connection, but they want control more. They want intimacy, but they want independence even more. They want to feel loved, but they fear being needed. So when the connection deepens, Their default response is tighten the boundaries, reduce the closeness, and protect their autonomy at all costs. This retreat is not because the bond didn't touch them. It's because it did, deeply, intensely, more than they were prepared to handle. And here's the part most people overlook. Pulling back gives them psychological relief. Distance resets their nervous system. It restores their illusion of emotional safety. They need the gap to feel like they're not being pulled into something they don't fully trust. Their silence isn't peace, it's self-regulation. Their distance isn't rejection, it's a defense mechanism. They aren't running from you. They're running from the emotional version of themselves they can't control. The frightening truth? A deep connection exposes their emotional unpreparedness. It forces them to confront wounds they've spent years burying: fear of vulnerability, fear of being seen, fear of failing someone, fear of not being enough, fear of relying on a bond they don't trust themselves to maintain. Their withdrawal is an escape from accountability. Because once the connection becomes real, expectations naturally grow: consistency, communication, emotional presence. They fear failing those expectations, so they choose detachment instead. This is why avoidant-leaning people oscillate between closeness and distance. They get close enough to feel the warmth but pull away before it melts their defenses. The connection feels good, but the vulnerability feels dangerous. The emotional truth feels attractive, but the responsibility feels suffocating. They aren't cold, they're conflicted. They aren't indifferent, they're overwhelmed. But overwhelmed people act like they don't care because caring threatens their emotional equilibrium. And here's the brutal part. They're not afraid of you leaving, they're afraid of themselves staying. Staying means commitment. Commitment means consistency. Consistency requires emotional honesty. And emotional honesty is the one thing they can't handle without feeling exposed. This is the reality you need to accept. You can create the safest emotional environment, you can communicate clearly, you can be understanding, and they will still pull back if they haven't developed the ability to stay present with their own emotions. You cannot outlove someone's internal avoidance. You cannot build with someone who collapses under their own vulnerability. You cannot carry a connection that someone keeps dropping the moment it becomes meaningful. But here's the part you must not forget. Their pulling back does not erase the impact you made. People don't retreat from connections that mean nothing. They retreat from connections that touch the parts of them they've been avoiding. You didn't push too hard. You didn't love too intensely. You didn't misread the closeness. The moment was real, that's why they couldn't stay in it. So instead of blaming yourself, understand this. A connection strong enough to activate someone's avoidance is a connection strong enough to transform you. If you stop chasing and start observing, their retreat is not your defeat. It's their mirror. And while they run from what they felt, you grow from what you learned. That is the difference between someone who is emotionally ready and someone who is emotionally overwhelmed. One moves forward, the other pulls back. And now you know exactly why?